Welcome to the Own It Powercast, the place to be when you get serious about making big changes and accelerating growth in your life and in your relationships. Finally create the life you've always wanted, living life on your own terms. Learn how to take your fear and turn it into powerful choices that will create sustained change. Now your host, Mary Baker.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Own It Powercast, the place to come to get what you need to move yourself forward. Hey, it's Mary Baker and welcome to episode 323, Your Brain on Fear, Why You React Before You Think. Well, welcome to a brand new month, which is going to be all about fear to forward, how we can interrupt our survival brain. And just to reassure you that you're not broken, your brain is just protecting you. But like we've talked about here before, protection isn't always aligned with who you are becoming and where you want to be. So this month, we're going to talk about how to recognize that fight, flight, or freeze or fawn in real time. We're going to talk about how to interrupt fear-based thinking and re-engage that prefrontal cortex and ways that we can make grounded values-based decisions. And my hope is that we can reclaim some agency. And next week, I'm really excited to have a guest on the show who's going to be talking more about this. So stay tuned for that. So have you ever sent a text that you immediately regretted? Maybe said yes when you meant no. Shut down, froze in a conversation and just couldn't find the words in that moment. Or maybe over-explain something simple until it became really complicated. Well, like we've been talking about here recently on the show, that's not weakness. It's just your survival brain trying to do its job to protect you. So what's happening neurologically, though? Well, your amygdala is your alarm system. That's what senses danger and puts you on higher alert. Versus the prefrontal cortex, your thinking brain is all about reasoning and perspective and regulation. And so when your brain senses that there's a threat, and that could be any kind of threat, that could be a physical threat, emotional, psychological threat, your amygdala's job is to scan for that threat, physical or emotional, and sound the alert very quickly, like instantaneously. And so it reacts before your thinking brain has time to even evaluate what's actually happening. Again, that's what happens when you jump out of the way when a car is coming at you. That's the part of your brain that doesn't have time to slow down and explain to you why you need to get out of the way. And we're very grateful for that when there's real danger. Because it's not stopping to ask, is this true? It just asks, is this dangerous? And it answers very quickly. And so once that alarm goes off, your stress hormones are going to flood your system. Your adrenaline increases your heart rate and your energy so that you can act. You can jump out of the way. And then your cortisol keeps you alert and on guard. So your whole body shifts into protection mode. It's preparing to fight or flee or freeze or appease, which is fawning. So even if the threat is just a difficult conversation, especially if you have had a history of people being emotionally unsafe in your life, especially growing up, that threat is going to seem very real. And so in your brain, blood flow shifts away from reasoning. Because when survival mode kicks into gear, our blood flow prioritizes areas needed for quick reaction, not careful thinking, which is why you're not thinking straight. Now, your prefrontal cortex, which is the part that's responsible for perspective and controlling your impulses and actually having empathy and long-term reasoning, well, guess what? It goes partially offline. We don't have access to it. And that's why in the moment, you can feel really certain, but not necessarily clear. Because your reaction gets prioritized over reflection, because it needs to. It's not safe to stop and reflect if there's a bear coming at you. So in survival mode, speed matters more than accuracy. Your brain would rather you overreact than underreact if there's real danger, and that makes sense. And so it pushes you to react immediately. to defend, to explain, to shut down, to chase, to withdraw. Because reflection requires calm and thoughtfulness, but survival requires speed. And when survival wins, reaction feels urgent and very justified. This is what we often refer to as an amygdala hijack. When your emotional brain temporarily overrides your thinking brain, you're not irrational, you're activated. It's a trauma response. And the good news is once you recognize it, you can work on interrupting it. So awareness of all this, I think, is part of the bridge back to steadiness. It's not the only part, but it's where we have to begin. Because your brain is not going to differentiate very well between a bear in the woods coming at you and your partner's disappointed tone, or an email from your boss, or silence in a relationship. If it feels like rejection or abandonment, loss of control, humiliation, well, that alarm is going to sound. And in some instances, it's not safe in your relationship, and I'm glad the alarm is sounding. But then we need perspective. So how does fear distort our perception? Well, fear is going to narrow literally our field of vision. You've probably heard the stories where if you're arguing with someone and you're really upset, you lose your peripheral. You don't even notice all the people staring at you guys at the party having an argument. It narrows because it can't afford to be distracted by things on the periphery. And so it's going to narrow, it's going to simplify, and guess what? It's going to exaggerate. It's going to say, this always happens. Or, uh-oh, you're about to lose everything, and you better fix this now. Or worse, you can't survive this. So fear creates that urgency as a protective measure, even when none is required. And that's where we want to focus in on, because we need to really look at how fear can turn like a delayed text from someone into abandonment. Or feedback, assuming it's healthy, constructive feedback, into humiliation. It certainly, if you haven't worked on boundaries, it can turn a boundary from someone else into rejection of you as a person. And then one that is very common, an ordinary disagreement into catastrophe. And so if any of those resonate, you may understand better why now. And it's not just you. Especially if the things I just mentioned actually happened in your past. Someone did set out to humiliate you or to ghost you and give you the silent treatment, not text you back, or disagreements were catastrophic. They were probably very unhealthy. Maybe when you were a kid, especially, you felt really scared. So a lot of times there's experiential data there to back up those fears. So the work is discerning real danger from emotional threat. So real danger, what I mean by that is immediate physical harm, an actual crisis, like a natural disaster or a fire or an accident or someone being lethal in your neighborhood and hurting people. So there's a true safety risk, a bodily harm safety risk. Maybe someone being physically abusive or threatening you or stalking you. Emotional threat is more about not so much feeling unsafe in a toxic situation. So I do want to point that out. Like if you're with a manipulator or someone who's emotionally abusive, no, that's real danger. That's not okay. But emotional threat is your garden variety stuff that happens in all of our relationships. And it's part of our growing process, like feeling discomfort, not feeling comfortable. You know, maybe making a mistake in your speech or forgetting to call someone back or someone pointing out something that you don't want to look at within yourself. And then there's disapproval. Other people may not approve of what you're doing or not doing or saying or not saying. There's the feeling like you're not being understood by someone or a few people, someone being upset with you. Not someone acting out, just someone saying, hey, I'm really upset about this, or I'm pissed off that you wrecked the car, kind of thing. There's regular healthy conflict, meaning people aren't being toxic. They're just disagreeing, and it's not fun, and it's not happy. Or uncertainty. So all of the things I just mentioned are a part of everyone's life. That's life. We have to manage and walk through those things. And oftentimes we're on either side of that equation. Sometimes we are disapproving of someone we love. Sometimes we're not understanding the other. So normal things. But here's the problem. Your nervous system reacts to both. It's emotional threat and real threats. But they require very different responses. So we have to go back to childhood for a moment and talk about that wiring and that reactivity again. Because if you grew up walking on eggshells, feeling like you didn't know what your parents' mood was going to be in the next 5 minutes, or an older sibling, or even your uncle that was living with you, that created a lot of anxiety. Maybe you grew up being criticized or shamed and you never knew when that was going to happen. Someone was really happy with you and nice, and then here comes the dig. Maybe just even being ignored emotionally. Maybe your caregivers just didn't have the energy, didn't have the emotional maturity, or both. Maybe you felt like you had to earn love by being perfect or being good or being compliant or being very successful. And so your nervous system learned very early what kept you safe. And if you grew up in a home where love felt conditional upon what you were going to do or not do, if love felt unpredictable, hot and cold, nice and nasty, or tied to any kind of performance, your brain made big meaning out of that. It learned, oh wow, connection equals safety. Oh, if they're happy with me, I'm okay. Or if I'm approved of, I belong. It also learned disapproval equals danger. Conflict means I could really lose connection and not be okay. And if you're a kid, that's really scary. Who's going to take care of you? And then being misunderstood can mean being alone. So abandonment. And so for a child, that wiring makes so much sense. Children are dependent. They need attachment to survive. So the brain links that emotional harmony with physical safety. The problem is that wiring doesn't automatically get updated in adulthood. So now your partner's frustration feels like abandonment. Even if people give you loving, healthy feedback, it can really feel like rejection. Someone pulling back from you can feel catastrophic, like you're going to implode. And then setting a boundary, saying no, that kind of thing, feels like you're going to risk connection. You're going to risk the relationship. So your nervous system continues to react as if your survival is on the line, even when what's actually happening is just discomfort. And discomfort is not danger. But when your body learned otherwise early on, it really feels like it is. So when your nervous system equates connection with safety, guess what you do? You start organizing your behavior around preserving connection at all costs. And I watch people do that all the time when I work with relationships and couples. That's where people-pleasing comes in. That's where over-explaining comes from. That's where apologizing for just existing comes from. If disapproval feels dangerous, you're going to smooth things over before anyone asks you to. If tension in a relationship or in the moment feels threatening, you're going to over-clarify your intentions to prevent being misunderstood. See, that's what I mean by you managing them. You making sure they understand you, because it feels unsafe if they don't. That's distance and that's scary, so you're really going to chase that reassurance. You're going to fix it. And none of that is weakness. I don't want you to feel bad about yourself if you happen to struggle with these. That's just your nervous system trying to prevent loss. And you are not responsible for your childhood. You can't be. If you'd had more emotional safety, you wouldn't be as reactive. So as an adult, though, You don't need to earn safety the way you once did. And discomfort isn't abandonment anymore. And disagreement, hopefully, isn't danger. If it is, you got to get the hell out of that relationship now. And someone being upset doesn't mean you're about to lose everything, or it shouldn't. So when you begin to separate that discomfort from threat, I think you're going to stop reacting for survival. And you're going to start slowly, over time, responding from more steadiness. This is a process. Slowly over time, a little bit more as you go. That's where your prefrontal comes back online. And I think that's where choice lives. And that's where all the freedom is. Because now, when someone sighs really loud, you might start to panic. Or someone pulls back a little bit and you start chasing them. Or someone disagrees with you and you over-explain. Or someone criticizes and you collapse or you attack, fight or flight. It's not drama. It's conditioning. The only time that's drama is if you're manipulating when you do that. Like you're really hoping that someone feels like crap and that you really need that power grab. That's a whole different conversation. What we're talking about today is fear. And fear can feel so damn convincing because it's fast, it's physical, it floods you, it's up in your system before you even know what to do with it. And that's because it's the same fear that makes you jump out of the way when a car is coming at you, like we talked about. And because it sounds like logic. Like fear's not going to say, hey, I'm dysregulated. It says, hey, this is a big problem. We got to fix it now. Now. It feels so certain. But it's adrenaline. It's not grounded, thoughtful, and serene. It's not always based on facts. But the problem is sometimes it is. And so your brain's like, well, we almost got run over last week and that actually happened. So you got to factor that in too. And this is why when you walk away from a conversation 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, a day later, depending on your level of trauma in your life, you're like, why didn't I just tell her that? Or why did I freeze or smile and say sure when that wasn't what I was feeling? Why didn't I set a boundary? Why did I not say no? Why did I not confront? Because you couldn't. You were frozen. Or why did I not offer some really great empathy when they were sharing what was going on for them? Because you couldn't. Because you were frozen or fighting. Because you were scared. So the 4 survival patterns are fawning, which is people pleasing, saying things like, oh, it's fine, or whatever you want to do, or I'm good, I don't need anything. You know what you're really messaging is, please don't leave me, please don't leave me, please don't leave me. Or fight, over-explaining, defending, yelling, prosecuting, like correcting tone, listing evidence, trying to win, becoming sharp. And the message is, I won't be wrong or powerless ever again. I won't. I'm not going to let that happen. Underneath of that is, I'm terrified to let that happen. Do you see the vulnerable underneath? Flight is another one. And what that can look like is busyness and avoidance, or changing the subject, or staying task focused, or escaping into productivity. And what that's messaging is, if I don't feel it, I'm safe. If I don't stand still long enough to sit in this, I'll be okay. And freezing, shutting down in the moment where, again, you can't find the words. You go really quiet, like you literally go quiet. It's almost like your verbal part of your brain goes offline. You feel numb or blank. And you remember everything later, like we just talked about. The message is, well, maybe if I disappear, it'll pass. And that's heartbreaking because somewhere in the past, that probably was a viable option. Maybe you had to. So those are the ones, and you may struggle with all of them or just one primarily. Be honest with yourself, bring compassion to it. First, accept it. And try to think about maybe why that makes sense for you growing up and why that makes sense for you in your adolescent relationships and some of your adult relationships, because we're going to put people in our life just like the ones we grew up with. So the pattern just continues. And I think it's reinforced. So how do we shift out of all this loveliness? Well, we got to work on the interruption. Like all the neuroscience is backing this up now. And so what you want to do is start practicing being aware and observant a little bit all the time. A lot of things we do compulsively without thinking. Our brain has automated it. We know that. So we want to stop and start observing. Like maybe noticing in a moment later today or tomorrow, like, wow, I really feel urgency. You noticing, you just shifted into your prefrontal. That's the key, and that's the kicker. That shift is everything. Instead of that compulsive, there's a problem. Oh my gosh, you're saying, I feel urgency right now. Do you feel there's a little bit of loving detachment there? There's observation. There's not compulsion. And so that's that subtle language that's extremely powerful. It doesn't mean you don't have to act on something. And I'm not talking about a physical emergency here. I'm talking about your day-to-day life. Urgency is often the signature of fear. So when you name it, you create just enough space between you and that reaction to begin choosing differently. You're not suppressing it. You're identifying it. And that's a big difference. I'm not asking you to do any kind of toxic positivity here. I'm not into that. What we're trying to do is not be a hostage to what our nervous system wants to do. The other thing you want to work on, and I know you've heard this a million times, but now we know why it works, is slowing your body down. Slowing down your breath, slowing down your posture, like trying to relax different muscle groups at a time. Soften your tone. Because without probably even noticing it, your body shifted into protection mode. So you got to get it back because your nervous system is like, okay, if we're still clenched, it's not safe, right? Like, I need to feel relaxed, physically in order for me to believe you that we're okay. And I don't think we talk about that enough, or we haven't. I think we're starting to more. So like dropping your shoulders or trying to unclench your jaw or put your feet really flat on the floor, lowering your voice. Your nervous system is going to follow your body, which is why after a massage or a relaxing meditation or yoga or something like that you do feel better. There's more to the feeling better than you ever realized. And now we're noticing how important this is. Because here's the thing, and this is what we do. We wait for our thoughts to calm first, and it doesn't work. You'll just stay stuck. You have to calm the physiology first. Then the thinking brain will come back online. Safety first, everything else second. We're not going to do any work if we're not safe. And I think we're finally starting to talk about that more in the field. So more observation, ask yourself, is this fear or fact? Again, there's that little space, just asking that question. Because fear is saying, oh my God, this always happens. They're pulling away. Oh crap, I'm getting ready to lose this. And fact is more specific. It says, they haven't really responded yet. Or, oh, look at that. They just disagreed with me. Or they look frustrated. Fear is going to speak in conclusions. Like this is definitely going to happen. Facts instead speak more in specifics. And I love that. I think that's so helpful. And you're not denying your feelings. You're just separating that interpretation from evidence, if that makes sense. I like the neutralizing. I'm like, it makes sense that she's upset. I just told her no, and she really wanted to go tonight. So you're neutralizing it. You're not taking it as personally, and you're bringing logic into it. It makes sense that she or anyone else, or even me in her shoes, would be frustrated right now. And I think it lowers the danger, the perception of danger in that, because you normalize it. and you allow for it and you're saying, okay, her or me or any wonderful human might be feeling frustrated, and that's okay. The other thing you want to do is try to delay your reaction if possible. Try not to respond in the peak of activation. We know this. Don't send that email, not the first draft. Sit on it. And find some phrases that work for you. And learn and practice saying, let me think about that. I need a minute. Can we come back to this in a bit? I know urgency makes you feel like delay is very dangerous, but it isn't. Outside of an actual dangerous event, it's not. It's okay. And time can really give you a chance to regulate. Like even 10 minutes, we know we can shift our nervous system like dramatically and bring our blood pressure down, calm the body, calm the mind. And then I want you to focus on intention. And intention is not the outcome. And just because we intend, maybe we still screw it up, that's okay. But again, once you get into intention, you're out of your limbic system. You're saying, who do I want to be in this moment? Do I want to be a jerk? Do I want to be thoughtful? Do I want to come across as calmer than I am? Not, oh gosh, how do I stop this discomfort? Instead, you want to say, okay, what response aligns better with my values? What protects my self-respect? Because yeah, I can go there with you, but am I going to like me later? And what reflects maturity? What would a really stable, emotionally mature person do, is what my client always says. I love that. It's fabulous. Reflex is survival. And that was okay back then when you needed to survive, but response is self-leadership is what I call it. And every time you choose a response over reflex, you build self-trust, you build confidence, but I also think you build safety. And I want you to feel safe. So calm isn't being passive, it's power. Not reacting very quickly, you will learn over time, is a hell of a lot more empowered, strong, and courageous. So remember, fear is loud, fact is steady, and learning that difference changes everything. If you're a fan of Brené Brown, listen to some of her research about resilient people. She goes all through this in a really great way. Resilient people, she says, take forever to respond. And they think about it and they breathe and they think about it and they ask pertinent questions because they're trying to figure out, do I need to freak out or can I just thoughtfully respond? When your nervous system equates connection with safety, you start organizing your behavior around all that. And all that people pleasing and apologizing and yelling and all the things, that's where that comes from. And smoothing things over and trying to fix it and backpedal your boundary and your ask is because disapproval feels dangerous. Intention might feel threatening. And you're just shifting that now. You don't need to earn safety the way you once did. And if anyone's going to abandon you over a disagreement, we have a different problem. And when you start separating your discomfort from an actual threat, you stop reacting for survival and you become steadier. So today we talked about why we react before we think and why just a simple conversation can feel so loaded and so urgent and so overwhelming. And we talked about what's happening inside your brain when fear takes that lead and why it takes the lead and why it took the lead in the past. And how looking at the subtle signs that survival mode might be running the show for you, the way you communicate in your body and your decisions. And then finally, we got into how can we start practicing interrupting that cycle? And that's going to take time. And it takes effort. It takes commitment, but we can do it. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this was helpful. Make sure you tune in next week when I have Doug Fleener on. He's going to talk about his book and about how to interrupt the process here. It's a great conversation. I really want you to hear what he has to say. And hang out with us this month and pass this along to people you know might get some help from this. If you want more, if you want to dive deeper, if you want to work with me, click the links in the show notes. There's courses there, there's downloads there. You deserve to feel better and to heal and to be more empowered. All right, so pay it forward, keep focusing on you, and I'll see you next time.
We hope you took away some useful insights and tools you can begin using right away. If you did, please leave a positive review and share on your social media. Because could you imagine if everyone in your life really got it together? Remember, own it now, so you can really own it later.